Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Schmoedown Rundown. Introducing first, Frankie Stats Janisch. And their co-host, the man of controversy, Mr. Brian the Duke David. And finally, your host, Aaron Turner. Let's get ready to Schmoedown.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Schmoedown Rundown, where we discuss all things Schmoedown. I'm Frank Janisch, your host for this week, as Aaron is off enjoying WrestleMania festivities. All right, so we had three very exciting matches this past week, and one I thought was pretty important. But before we can get into all of that, let's introduce the panel. Back with us once again, he is Brian Davids.
Now, Frank, we were supposed to say that Aaron was on assignment, but now you gave it away.
Well, I thought the cat was out of the bag last week, but I guess we could have went that route to save his butt. Oh, well.
But who's our special guest? I mean, that is really the lead here.
Right. So usually, if we're fortunate to have someone from the Schmoedown on the show, we usually have a nice interview for 10, 15 minutes with them. But lately, we've been pretty lucky enough to have them for the whole show and getting their thoughts on the matches from the past week. First, it started with JTE, then Emma5, and now this week, we're glad to be joined by Compton's very own, for the whole show, Robert Butler III, a.k.a. RB3. Thanks for joining us, man. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure, and I look forward to talking Schmoedown.
Awesome. So there was a few nuggets of news this week. Obviously, Star Wars Celebration's coming up in a couple weeks, and it was announced officially that the Schmoedown will be at Star Wars Celebration. There will be a triple threat match between Sam Witwer, Mr. Ken Knapsack, and John Campea. That will take place on Friday, the 14th of April. The match will be recorded, I've heard. And then we also got some news earlier this week about the team title matches. Now, the Patriots will have the option to pick who they play next for the title. They can either choose the winner of Wolves of Steel versus ETC, or they can play top 10 to defend against in May. Whoever they don't choose will get the shot at Collider Collision in July. There are no set dates for these matches yet. Guys, what do we think of these two news nuggets? Brian, let's start with you.
Well, as far as Star Wars Celebration, I would call it more of a double threat match plus John Campea. I kid. Obviously, we're all looking forward to this after the controversial match between the Force Bros and the Council. Yeah, I'm disappointed that Freddie won't be able to join the rest of the group, but you can't ask for anything better than that match at Celebration. And what was the reason for the Patriots getting the luxury of choice? Was there any specific reason, or does the chairman just want to mix it up?
I think that was the chairman's call to try and mix it up, as he usually tries to do. RB3, what about some of these nuggets of news? Are you going to be at Star Wars Celebration?
No, I will not be at Star Wars Celebration, unfortunately, but I'm looking forward to watching the Star Wars Movie Trivia Schmoedown at home. Sam Witwer is obviously a beast. He blew through the competition last time. You know, he was kind of carrying Freddie Prinze Jr. I think he's going to putting him against Ken Knapsack and Campea, where, you know, in a field of Schmoedown, Campea has not been the best, but in the Star Wars competitions, he's really been able to shine. So I think seeing that fatal three-way, is that what we call it? That'll be a hell of a competition. I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, this three-way in the Schmoedown for Star Wars Trivia Championship, if you will, there's really no room for error. All three guys are really, really good at Star Wars trivia. But if you miss one or two questions out of, I'm not sure how many questions, let's say 25, 30 questions, that could be the difference. So the margin for error is unbelievably small no matter how good you are. So I'm looking forward to a very tight and competitive match. And then taking into account the crowd at Star Wars Celebration, I think is going to be just an amazing atmosphere because all Star Wars fans love to tout their knowledge. So I'm sure plenty of people in the crowd will, know probably almost all of these answers, just like the three competitors. So I think it's going to be really, really awesome.
Frank, I was just going to say that no one has home field advantage in this match. I mean, previously Ken and Campea had the friendly confines of Collider Studio. They had a small audience. Now the game has changed when you have who knows how many people are going to be watching this thing, plus the pressure of a bigger venue. So what happened at Collider Studio is not necessarily going to happen at Celebration.
Okay, moving on to the match recaps. Earlier this week on Monday, we had our Celebrity Power Ranger match. It was Team Power versus Team Ranger. Team Power consisted of Becky G, who's the Yellow Ranger in the movie, and Ludi Lin, who plays the Black Ranger in the movie, against Team Ranger of RJ Seiler, the Blue Ranger, and Dacre Montgomery, the Red Ranger. Did I say that right?
Dacre Montgomery and RJ Kyler.
Okay. That match ended with Team Power winning 22-20. RB3, let me start with you. What did you think of getting this kind of match, and how did you think the match went?
I think the match was a lot of fun, man. I think with the questions that they provided, obviously it wasn't the same caliber level of questions that there normally is, but that's totally fine. They're celebrities and they're actors. They're not professional movie critics and journalists like a lot of the competitors in the league are. So having those questions were really good. Becky G was the standout for me. She provided a lot of knowledge that I wasn't necessarily sure she was going to bring to the table, but she was great. I actually have had a lot of personal, not interactions, but a lot of my personal mutual friends I have with Becky G, given that she's from Inglewood, I'm from Compton, we're around the same age. And a lot of people I know went to middle school with her, so it's quite an interesting thing. But her performance was a real standout, especially in the beginning. RJ was not the best, but he was the funniest to me. He had the most personality, and I think bringing that into the game was hysterical. Dacre was really great as well, and so was Lou. I'm sorry, what's his name?
Ludi Lin.
Ludi Lin. Thank you. He was fun as well. So I think overall, the match was a nice exposition. I hope to see more celebrity matches come into the studio because I think that's a great way to help promote the Schmoedown.
And Brian, what did you think about it?
Do you guys mind if I rant for a second?
Please do.
We said we're not going to analyze the Power Rangers match in too much detail because it was an exhibition match. It was meant to be fun and entertaining, something it definitely accomplished. And I'll be honest, I had zero interest in seeing the Power Rangers movie, but the cast sort of won me over, especially RJ Kyler, whose laugh is really the best one we've heard since RB3 first debuted last March, a year ago. I can't believe it's already been a year, but I just might check out this movie before it leaves theaters, which is why the major studios should add the Schmoedown to their tentpole press tours. This is what they want, which is to convert people into seeing the film. So I have to rant about something else, though, as I've noticed that some people are complaining about the match being easy while missing the greater purpose of what these celebrity matches bring. Yes, they're supposed to be fun and entertaining without having major stakes. Obviously, there will be exceptions here and there, something we've seen with the Force Bros. However, the purpose of these matches, from Collider's position, is to grow the Schmoedown. To this point, the league has grown by bringing in fellow entertainment websites and channels so that their audiences will tune in and hopefully stick around. Since the Schmoedown started, we've seen a lot of SJ personalities, so it's safe to say that their audience is well aware of the Schmoedown by now, and that's why Christian continually seeks out new talent such as IGN so that their readers can become fans as well. However, you can only gain so many new viewers when you stick to competition within your own space, YouTube. After 8 appearances, Dan Murrell can only do so much to bring in new viewers as those numbers have plateaued. That's why you want to reach outside your direct network and into the celebrity pool, because their followings can be massive. If The Rock and Kevin Hart were to play, you not only introduce their audiences to the Schmoedown, you also validate the Schmoedown, since their appearance is an endorsement of sorts. And if 1% of The Rock's 11 million followers likes the show enough to stick around for another episode or more, the Schmoedown doubles its audience on average. Plus, once other studios and their marketing team see The Rock or a Kevin Hart, even the Power Rangers compete in the Schmoedown, they're going to want to get their talent involved too. So try not to dwell too much on celebrity matches being easy and whatnot, because they're serving a much bigger purpose. Don't get me wrong. Every once in a while, you're going to have celebrity competitors like Sam Witwer who take it very seriously, but they're meant to grow the league.
I agree completely.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of great points in there, Brian.
Thanks,
and
guys.
I think one of the more important thing here is that you touched on was opening the Schmoedown to different audiences. I think you cast your net in certain pockets of fans and areas of fandom, like perhaps a younger or older generation, depending who's seeing the Power Ranger movie. You're going to kind of pull some of them in to the Schmoedown, and then maybe you're right, they become fans and they stick around, because I think movie trivia is something that's kind of I guess universal with just about anybody, because everybody watches movies. Everybody knows a little bit of something about some or a lot of movies, and that's very relatable across the board, no matter the genre of film. Another thing that I thought that was interesting was something Becky G said in her post-match interview with Emma 5, saying that this is something different and fun that, as a cast, that they were able to do together instead of just sitting in a chair for hours on end doing these press juggins. So I think that can be appealing as well to certain actors, actresses, movies that want to promote in a different way and not do the same repetitive thing. I think the Schmoedown gives them a different venue to promote a movie or a project, what have you. And I think that can be very beneficial in the future, especially if you get a Rock, a Kevin Hart in the future. And I think with this Power Ranger match, it just sets the stage. We've already got the Forest Bros and Sam Witwer and Freddie Prinze Jr. Now you got the Power Ranger match here. And I think we're going to continue, hopefully, to see similar matches go down in the future. Any final thoughts from anyone?
Well, no, I mean, just imagine the upside of having more of these celebrity matches too. And the way the Power Rangers match was so well produced, imagine something like a Fast and the Furious cast coming in, or the Avengers coming in, or something along the lines of, another big ensemble. I'm so glad you brought up the Becky G point, because that is something different. A lot of these actors get tired of the same promotional materials, going to press junkets, interviews. They get to, then, especially with such a young cast like the Power Rangers, they get to have fun with something like this. So I'm very excited for it. And especially, talking about The Rock, I know he's a big movie fan. So he would love to, I think he would love to come into this competition as well. So I'm very excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, word will travel fast. What a fun promotional stop the Schmoedown can be, considering that they're used to sitting in a nondescript hotel in downtown LA in a conference room with a little poster behind them answering the same question over and over in 4-minute spurts. So the Schmoedown will travel fast once you get that one big domino to fall.
Yeah, and another thing is they're not just promoting their movie. They're, in a way, promoting themselves, their personality. So you become fans of that individual or individuals,
yeah.
and that can be beneficial to the person themselves going forward and gain maybe even a larger following.
I said it up top. I had no interest in seeing this movie, but after watching the 4 of those actors, I kind of want to support them now. So mission accomplished.
All right, next up we have the match that we're going to cover is the InnerGeekDom Fatal Five-Way that took place this past Friday. It was between Michele Boyd, Rachel Cushing, Jason Inman, Jeremy Jahns, Hal Rudnick. This was basically in the same format of the original InnerGeekDom Fatal Five-Way Championship. Slight variation between the first and second round. There were actually, I think the format was flipped. So let's go through the first 2 rounds because they're basically the same. Brian, you want to get us through those first 2 rounds?
So getting into the round-by-round coverage, as this match was quite a surprise every which way, even round by round, it was a pretty close round 1. Jason Inman won the round with 6 points. Rachel was second with 5 points, even though the scoreboard reflected 4 points. Jeremy also had 4 points, and then Michele Boyd with 3. And overall, it kind of went the way we expected. We all kind of favored Jason Inman. He was the heavy favorite, as Booker T also had him as well. But some surprises in that Rachel Cushing is not a fluke. I mean, we didn't expect her to be a fluke. We didn't expect her to be a one-category wonder, but she is showing that she is a lot more than just an Oscar specialist. So I was really happy to see that she kept the momentum going, and she's as well-rounded as anyone. Hal Rudnick was eliminated. He was simply outmatched. And, spoiler alert, he basically retired from InnerGeekDom at the end of the match. But any surprises, RB3, when it came to round 1?
Any surprises? Yeah, I think Hal goose egging it was a big surprise for me. I thought he would carry on a little bit further. Jeremy definitely surprised me because after the last InnerGeekDom match that he was in, he didn't really show much there, but I'm glad to see him come back here. Rachel, of course, I mean, we're going to talk about it through the whole time, and Jason doing well as well. So overall, it was looking pretty good. It was shaping up very well. Before the first round, though, I was really impressed to see Michele Boyd joining the Nurse Watch.
That's right.
With Ken Knapsack and Rachel Cushing. I think that's forming into one really good-looking faction in the Schmoedown. So I'm excited to see that.
Michele, the Mad Dog Boyd, she's joined Ken's stable of contradiction, if you will. Really excited to see that. Although Campea kind of ripped Ken by comparing him to Finstock before the match, saying that he can't win on his own, which I don't think is true. And that's kind of a strange thing to say when Ken carried Campea in the Force Bros Council match. So very, very surprising to hear all that. But Frank, what were your thoughts on round 1?
Round 1 was a little surprising because Hal Rudnick did go over in there. It was nice to see basically the 3 people I thought the strongest, Rachel Cushing, Jason Inman, Jeremy Jahns, do well. I liked the way Jeremy Jahns played this match. I mean, he only missed 1 question out of their 6 that they had to answer. Same thing with Rachel. And Jason Inman off to a fantastic start. Like we had said last week on the show, this was his match to lose, and we'll obviously get to that part. But I was also glad to see Rachel do really well in this round, and she got some of these questions, I was just, some deep dives into these franchises that I have no clue about, but it's highly entertaining when you hear these questions and then people answer them correctly. It's kind of mind-blowing in a sense. And the same thing with, I think we can go into round 2 right here, with Hal Rudnick being eliminated. Michele Boyd, who only had 3 points in that first round, didn't fare as well in round 2, coming up with 2 points out of 9 questions. They didn't have to go the full 10. But she did make it a bit interesting at the end with questions 7 and 8, the Harry Potter question and the Lord of the Rings question. And then Jason Inman, Jeremy Jahns kind of staying steady at 5 points each. Rachel in this round all really started to shine, and she picked up some huge questions that I thought were very impressive. And once this round concluded, I thought Rachel is one of the more well-rounded competitors that we're going to see in this league. Not only is she good in the general trivia when she was in her match as as Team Nerd Watch with Ken Knapsack. Yeah, she got the Oscars category. She rolled through that, which Oscars can be a very broad set of questions in a geek setting, and she was crushing all of these. And when she does make her debut in singles, it's going to be scary whoever she goes up against. But I don't get off track here. RB3, what did you think of round 2?
Round 2 is fascinating. Obviously, we see Michele getting the boot here, unfortunately. But I think it was a really competitive round. Again, we saw Jeremy step up. We saw Jason Inman step up. And we saw Rachel, again, blazing through the competition. I was very excited for this round in particular because they had many DCEU references here. So, including an infamous question of Batman v Superman. I thought was excellent. But yeah, everything else was wonderful here, and I'm really glad to see that.
When it comes to all the Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings questions, I was amazed what Rachel was doing for the majority of this match. I mean, she could not be stopped in these categories. And I think it was JTE on the Schmoes Know show who said, that she was a one category wonder. He was talking smack with Ken back and forth because Ken was stating how the entire purpose of the Nerds Watch is to destroy the Patriots. And Rachel Cushing, she is not just going to tear up the women's singles, she's going to tear up the entire league. So amazing performance, and we've got more of that to come, obviously. But Michele Boyd, I know she was eliminated, but I hope they can find a place for her in this league. She's a great presence, and you know that there's a certain type of format that is right for her. I don't know if it's InnerGeekDom, but I think she would be someone to consider for women's singles, if anything.
The interesting thing with her joining the Nerds Watch is there's this idea floating around called the Freebird rule, where you can swap in somebody to play on your team.
Right.
Let's say Ken Knapsack's not available, maybe Michele Boyd pops in, or for whoever else, some sort of rotation goes on. I wonder if that might be an option going forward. Time will tell. But getting into the third round, this is where it went pretty bonkers for me when Rachel just destroyed Harry Potter, destroyed every Inman and Jahns in this round. It was quite a sight to see her just blow through these Harry Potter questions. And then when it came time for Jason Inman's set of questions in Lord of the Rings, both opportunities to steal, she grabbed them. Even though Jeremy Jahns knew the question, just wasn't quick on the buzzer. It was an impressive showing by Rachel in the third round. Brian, what are your thoughts on the third round?
Yeah, she had that perfect Harry Potter round with her spin. But what was interesting, when Inman spun opponent's choice, Rachel conferred with Jeremy, and they just gave him Lord of the Rings right back. And what Jeremy kind of failed to consider, it seems, is that Rachel was going to kind of strengthen her lead with that choice. And that meant potentially eliminating Jeremy because she was going to dominate those questions too. So that almost backfired against Jeremy, as Inman could have squeaked out an advancement to the next round. So in the future, you've got to be careful about what you select as far as an opponent's choice when you're competing against someone that you're conferring with. But Rachel, my God, she is the real deal and more. This was one of the most dominant performances that we've ever seen. Of course, she won this round. This was her second round that she's won in this match, 2 out of 3. Jeremy spun DC movies, but the round was still well decided by then. And even though Inman stole question 4 under Jeremy's turn, he was still eliminated anyway. But Rachel was the story. My goodness. Heading into round 4, it's Jeremy and Rachel toe-to-toe. Keep in mind, Jeremy has not won a round to this point. Rachel took 2 out of the 3. Inman took the first one. So Jeremy played well enough to stick around. And in round 4, he basically played with nothing to lose. It was a speed round. The points reset once again. The winner faces Robert Meyer Burnett. Jeremy hit the buzzer soon enough. Every question Got Perry White, Lawrence Fishburne question 1. Got the second question when it came to the in-name prancing pony, and then Jar Jar for the win. Who knew Jar Jar would yield such positive results at this stage in the Star Wars lore? But Jeremy snuck a win out, and it's a bit controversial if you ask me, just because Rachel was so dominant, and yet that dominance did not carry over to round 4. But great strategy by Jeremy nonetheless. I mean, if you can win, no matter what you have to do, you got to do it. So, man, I mean, it's, again, I keep focusing on this, but it's a raw deal for Rachel, but she is kind of the new Hector post Spectacular, which is a comparison that I wrote down right before Christian said it on the air. So it's a great analogy, though. She's kind of the people's champion right now, and she's going to be the winner of the InnerGeekDom title at some point down the road. So RB3, thoughts on round 4?
Well, going back to round 3 for a second, I also want to mention that, of course, Rachel dominating with 11 points, but obviously he was the front runner going in. I still think he's a great competitor. Everybody has those days. Even when you're the best, you might end up playing somebody better than you, or your competitor might get better categories than you, things they're stronger at. So that was just the unfortunate case for Jason. I hate to see him go. He was one of my favorite competitors in this league. It was, especially considering he was willing to go for a triple threat match with Robert Meyer Burnett and Hector Navarro in the last InnerGeekDom Championship. He's going full force into this InnerGeekDom thing, and it's unfortunate to see him take off after that round. But besides that, Rachel, like you said, dominating round 3, 11 points, mind-blowing, conferring with Jeremy for the round, great strategy. Obviously, I think if they would have picked Star Wars, which is Jeremy's bigger strength, that would have worked out much better for Jason in the long run. But luckily, they went for Lord of the Rings. And by the way, I just want to say, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, I'm so glad I'm not competing in this InnerGeekDom stuff because I've watched those movies, quite a few times, but I know none of those questions. I'm more of the comic book guy. We'll see that when we eventually talk about my match. But in addition, we see the new buzzards, which made their debut in my match first off, but became prominent there. These buzzers are highly sensitive. They're from Europe, so when you tap the buttons, it actually goes into a system which indicates who hit it first. So it's very accurate. I saw some people in the comments debating. It's actually no debate. These buzzers are very accurate. So here we see them, and obviously in round 3, Jeremy wasn't too familiar with them, so he wasn't using them as fast. He became very familiar with them in round 4, and that's what ultimately took home the win, man. Is that he was able to answer the questions before they even finished reading them. So it was a very interesting match. I'm glad to see, me and Jeremy are really good friends, and me and Rachel as well, and me and Jason too. But, everybody here, I'm so glad to see him doing so well, having such success in the InnerGeekDom world. And that's something I did not look forward to competing in. So
everybody suffers the wrath of the wheel, in most matches. In this case, it was Jason. And look, this is going to be a good thing for him, I think, because now he's going to go sharpen his Lord of the Rings skills, because next time he cannot have another category that he can be exploited in. And I think Lord of the Rings, I think he probably took it for granted. I don't think that was ever a strength of his, but because of this match, he's going to come back even stronger and more dangerous because he'll learn from this. So Frank, what are your thoughts on the end of round 3 and round 4?
Going back to a point you made, Brian, about Rachel and Jeremy conferring, I thought it was a great move that it ended up being Lord of the Rings.
Agreed.
Because he, and also here's another reason why, though. If Rachel is so strong in Lord of the Rings and she can steal those points and not let Jeremy get them, that's a huge deal for her, because I don't think she wanted to go up against Jason Inman in the 4th round.
Absolutely not.
If she can somehow make sure that she hoards all the points, that makes it really easy for Jeremy to basically only needs 3 points to advance. So he had 4 questions. He could have went multiple choice on all of them, and secured advancement to the 4th round. So I thought it was a really good play on Rachel's part to make sure that no matter what, she was getting into the 4th round, but make sure she faced who she wanted to face in the 4th round. Unfortunately, it didn't work out so well for her in the 4th round, as Jeremy just went on a tear with that buzzer system. And real quick, RB3, about that buzzer system, you obviously know more than we do. You mentioned it goes into some sort of system where it notifies. I think all that we saw was the buzzers light up. Is there something else that notifies?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they have a monitor that's in front of who's ever running the show. So in this case, I believe it was Cushing and John Campia. So once you hit the buzzer, and on that monitor, that's where they have the score. So I think when you hit if I'm not mistaken, I'm not 100% on this, but I'm sure. I think if you hit the button, it will light up which competitor hit it first on the monitor, and then it will also light up the button that hit first as well. So,
as long as the announcers can see it, that's all that matters. And Frank, just to back up for a second, the conferring issue, it was more the matter that Lord of the Rings helped Rachel more than it helped Jeremy, because Jeremy could have just as easily been eliminated since he only had 1 more point than Jason. So in the future, you just got to be careful that you help yourself a little bit too, and that you don't have a situation where Rachel potentially hoards all the points and Jason could eliminate you on a steal or something. So I think Jeremy was kind of kicking himself in that moment because it almost backfired. That was my point.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair way. That's a fair point. Yeah, I'm seeing what you're saying now. That let's say even if Jeremy or they had picked a category pertaining to Jeremy's strains, and let's say he gets all those points, then there's actually no reason for him to play his set of questions. So if he had got enough more than Inman.
Well, also one last thing though, I know we have obviously a very competitive InnerGeekDom league right now, and I'm very excited to see that. But nobody's taking away the belt from my boy Hector Navarro, the Young Bucks. It's not happening. Hector is out there. He's grinding, and there's nobody in this league who's going to take it from him. So I'm always going to have his back whenever he plays. And this InnerGeekDom championship is ours, baby. So
RB3, do you want to call out Team Action real quick, because they tried to say that they were the Young Bucks in their match? Do you want to kind of take that term back real quick just to clarify matters?
Team Action, Team who? What is this? I never even heard of this team. Exactly. We're the Young Bucks. Okay, Copster, myself, Greg and John from the Real Rejects. Hector Navarro. We're building up one of the best and biggest factions in this league. We already have the InnerGeekDom championship. I'm coming for the singles championship. The Real Rejects, they're going to take a little work, but they're going for the team championship. So it's all coming to a head. We're going to talk about my match in a second, but I just want to say, I'm not playing in this league just to play. It's not an exposition. It's not a game. I'm going for the championship.
We got to discuss one thing before we get to RB3's fantastic match. And this is the fact that Rachel dominated this match, and yet she lost. Now, some people are arguing that points should carry over. So if you win round 1 or you win round 2, maybe 1 point should carry over to the next round. So you're rewarded for the rounds that you've won previously. Thus, Rachel would have had 2 points. She round 1s 2 and 3. She would have had 2 points going into round 4, the final round. Jeremy did not win a single round the entire match except for the final round. So a lot of people feel that whomever wins each round should have a reward, an advantage because of that win instead of resetting. So Frank, let me get your take. Do you think points should carry over to some degree? I know we don't have all the answers, but we're raising these questions for discussion. So,
right. And I think it's a very good question to raise, because even I thought the same thing during this match, that Rachel is basically the next Hector Navarro, because he dominated his match. I mean, absolutely dominated, much in the same way Rachel did Rachel did hers, especially in that third round stealing, when the stealing is available, because Hector also just destroyed in that round as well. So very similar games from both Hector Navarro and Rachel Cushing, yet did not come up with the win. And one thing I think that was also a difference in this match is in the fourth round, it wasn't whoever gets to 5 points first. It was basically best out of 5.
Right.
And that was that made a difference in the match, because it didn't allow Rachel to kind of catch up there at the end to get to 5 points. So I don't know if I really like that aspect. I like getting to 5 first, and then, because I think a lot of times you might even get to a sudden death, and that's always very entertaining.
RB3, do you think points should carry over depending on who won the previous 3 rounds going into round 4?
I'm not sure if points necessarily should carry over. I'm not sure how they will work the way, but I mean, ultimately, of course, Rachel scored way more points than Jeremy, but of course, Jeremy still wins.
That's the problem.
But I don't know how they would adjust that. Maybe if it was a collective amount of points throughout all the rounds, like, you know, in the first round she had 5, second round she had 6, if I'm not mistaken, right? Third round she had 11. That's a total of 22 points, whereas Jeremy would only have something like 13 points or something like that. So hypothetically speaking, she should have won the match, given that she had more points. But that's just the way the game is. I'm not sure if adjusting the rules will help make or break it, make a difference. I think it is more. I think as a viewer, it's funner, and it's more fun, and it's a little more competitive, having the slate clean per round. But that being said, I'm not sure exactly how this situation would happen to correct itself. But ultimately, I think it's fair that Jeremy won, and I think it was a great debut and InnerGeekDom by Rachel. So,
for my current solution, which is current thinking out loud, it would have been 2-0 Rachel going into round 4. She won 2 rounds already. Jeremy didn't win any. So she should have a little bit of an advantage, a little bit of a reward for all the work that she did in the first 3 rounds. And yet it still gives Jeremy a chance in round 4 to win. Obviously, we should go with Frank's solution, which is to have all 5 questions asked versus being a best of 5. So I think that's a more fair solution to things right now. But Frank, any final thoughts on the carryover question?
I just hope that they somewhat consider changing the format of how points do or do not carry over, or what points you do carry over. I think it definitely, because this is the second time in a row that this has happened. I know we've only had 2 matches like this, but it's happened in both instances. So that means now that Rachel's got to wait to get like a singles geekdom match, which if this was a singles geekdom match, I think Rachel obviously crushes, no pun intended. So it's I don't know. It's kind of, I'm in between, because I like the way it plays out, but at the same time, Rachel was the better competitor. And looking at the overall stats here real quick for Rachel, she was asked or tried to answer 21 questions. She got 17 correct. That's nearly 81% correct. Jeremy Jahns, 22 questions, 16 correct for 72.73%. So in that regard, not just points-wise, but also question-wise, she answered 1 more, and she actually was asked 1 less. So to me, she had a very overall dominant performance, and yet has to wait. So it's an unfortunate situation. I personally do not think anything is going to change for quite some time, until it gets pretty egregious, I think, until it's just like someone had 30 points going into the last round and the other person had 12, and then the person with 12 points wins because they got 3 in a row correct, like Jeremy Jahns did. And I think it's going to take something crazy for it to switch up. So those are my kind of final thoughts.
It was something worth discussing because the top performer in this match did not win. So I just thought it was a fair discussion. But one more point about the buzzers. I like that the announcers can see who buzzes in first. That is better than nothing. But as a viewer, I wish that I could see who buzzes in first with a bit more certainty. It's still hard to see if you're watching at home, but as long as the announcers can see, that's certainly an upgrade from the last.
It lights up. I think if you hit it,
it does light up. It does light up, but it's hard to see who's first because everybody's pressing so close together. So I wish it would kind of lock in on the screen as to who was first, but that, that's pricier technology that is way, way beyond us right now. But as long as the announcers know, that's what I care about most versus Josh McCouga having to stand there and guess who was first. So anything is better than that.
All right. Yeah, I agree.
Well, let's talk the singles match. Frank, you want to introduce us to that?
Yeah, we had the Mighty Matt Knost. Is that his name? Or the mechanic? He has so many.
Mighty Matt.
Taking on our very own RB3 here. Unfortunately, it didn't go RB3 way. It did go to sudden death. Final score was 15-14 in favor of Knost. But I thought it was a pretty impressive showing by both of these players. RB3, let's just start with you right away. How did you feel coming out of that first round?
Well, the first round was tough for me because obviously I scored only 3 of 8. It's like 38%. I wasn't feeling the best, but it was a nice pickup because I answered the last 2 correctly.
Yeah.
So going into round 4, I had a little more. Going into round 2, I had a little more momentum, and I think that's what allowed me to do better in round 2. But round 1 was brutal, especially considering there was a large gap of like 5 questions that I just couldn't answer right. I tried to give my best guesses. Looking back on the match when it aired, I could see now I didn't know many of those anyway. So, Monday morning quarterback. You could look at it however way you want to look at it. Maybe I would have taken a different guess or whatnot. But at the end of the day, I still felt pretty confident going into the next round, which I think helped me do well in the match.
I've got a mini rant that I want to make, and it concerns the pre-match hoopla. Matt Knost really needs a gimmick because he's so closely associated with the Outlaw and because he goes after the chairman in most of his matches. And he's the Jazzy Jeff to Rocha's Fresh Prince, as Ellis put it, but Jazzy Jeff at least had a gimmick. So I just think it's a wasted opportunity for Knost not to play off of Outlaw's persona with something of his own. He could be the Charlie Prince to Rocha's Ben Wade. It's really not that difficult to bounce off of the Outlaw, the biggest personality, the biggest persona in this league. But round one, I was very proud of RB3 for getting himself back in it with those last 2 questions, 4-3 going into round 2. Matt Knost kind of had all the categories going his way in this match, except for the final question of this match. But everything was going his way. Well, RB3 had some tougher breaks, but you got comic book movies, and that was such a huge moment because it almost went on to the next category, which may have been opponent's choice. It was nothing good, but you finally countered the luck that he was having with his categories, and you got yourself right back in it with a tie going into round 3. So you fought tough, man. You fought tough. So
thank you.
I want to say one thing, though. When it came to the James Cromwell question, you said in the post-match that you were regretting taking that to multiple choice, but in hindsight, you got the point because it went to multiple choice. If you had said James Conway without multiple choice, they probably wouldn't have given you the point, but because it was multiple choice, you got the point. So it kind of worked out in your favor, even though you may have been able to answer that question on other days without multiple choice. So mispronunciations. I keep saying the wrong word for a former segment, but mispronunciations on multiple choice are allowable. as we've seen here. So that worked in your favor is my point. Any thoughts going into round 3 besides the ones mentioned?
Well, yeah, that's, and the mispronunciation is a great point, because that's the exact reason why I chose multiple choice on the Iron Man 3 extremist question, because I knew exactly what it was. I knew exactly how it was spelled, and I read the comic books that it's based on, but I just had no idea how to say it correctly. So that's why I went to multiple choice, because I knew as soon as they said it, I would have the right answer for it. And obviously James Cromwell. So yeah, I'm already having a hard time pronouncing it now. So again, that's the thing. And like you said, I went multiple choice on it, and it really propelled. It really allowed me to get the question right. Unfortunately, it only allowed me to get 6 out of 8 potential, which hurt a little bit. But going into the next round, it did help me be able to level the playing field with Matt Knost.
And talk about a great 2-pointer to start off with. Aaron Turner, our host, his favorite movie, Pulp Fiction. Its movie release year, 1994. You knew that right away. And tell us what it's like when you hear the question read and you know it right away. Is that just an unbelievable feeling when you basically have a hanging breaking ball over the plate?
Yeah, no, it was great. And honestly, when they say movie release dates, I was very happy, because I think I'm one of the few competitors in this league that could do really well in that. I think partially because since I'm so young, I've been using IMDb for so many years that the first thing on IMDb that comes up next to the title is the year it was released. So movie release dates, every time I've seen that category pop up in the Schmoedown, I've been able to get like almost all of those questions correct. And having Pulp Fiction, which is obviously one of my favorite movies as well, that was really helpful going for the 2-pointer.
Unfortunately, Knost had his own hanging breaking ball with Meg Ryan and Top Gun, Goose's wife. That tied it back up. You had the lead briefly. And then your 3-pointer, Rob Reiner, you took the lead again. Misery's director, you had mentioned Rob Reiner earlier in the match. And I thought this would be the clincher for you because you had mentioned Rob Reiner earlier in the match. I just felt, wow, this is going your way because of the Rob Reiner thing. It just happened to come back like that. But then, of course, Matt Knost got a very easy question. John Candy and Cool Runnings tied it back up at 14-14. Frank, what are your thoughts so far on the 3-pointers as well as Knost's 2-pointer?
Knost's 2-pointer, Top Gun was one of my favorite movies growing up. It was actually, I think, in fact, the first movie I can ever remember seeing when I was like 5 years old, which is kind of weird when you think about it. So I knew the answer was Meg Ryan, and I thought somebody like Matt Knost should definitely know that answer because Top Gun was an insanely popular movie during those times and continues sort of to be popular. And then that 3-pointer rather, I mean, who doesn't like Cool Runnings? And John Candy is such an iconic comedic actor. I thought it was just, a pretty easy question. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I thought finally Rob Reiner being a correct answer was a pretty funny moment in the match. I thought that was pretty funny. And then, at the end of the match, I want to ask you, RB3, your 5-pointer, that rom-com question, the Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert question.
Yes.
How close were you to that answer? It seemed like you had a fair idea of where to go with an answer.
I was 100. I knew that answer 100%. And that's what made it so sad for me. I put it on Twitter early, and I'm going to say it again. This was my best spin. This was the question. I consider myself an aficionado in classic film, and especially considering we had, in my cinema class, we had literally just watched that last semester. Oh. I was very familiar with it, and my reasoning behind answering All About Eve is because I've been on a big Betty Davis and Joan Crawford kick because of the new Feud show that has been airing, and obviously All About Eve stars Joan Crawford, and the whole thing with the Betty Davis and Feud, their movie that they did together was What Happened to Baby Jane. So I guess in my brain, which is weird, I connected Happened and that title with Happened in What Happened One Night. and it just got flustered, and I just answered whatever was in between. I think if I would have taken a couple seconds to think about it, I would have actually gotten it correct. With that being said, it's tough. Like I said, this is my best man. And, you may be asking, why am I comparing myself to John Roca, the champion? Because I am the champion. I'm the future champion.
Sorry to interrupt, Robert. I was going to ask you about this because in my college film class, we studied It Happened One Night. So given what you're studying at USC, I knew right away that you've probably studied this movie as well. So I'm not surprised to hear that. But overall, even though you're comparing it to your Bespin, you still have the much tougher draw in round 3 compared to Knost. He had answerable questions across the board: Meg Ryan, John Candy, and then, of course, Little Nero's in Home Alone, which he did not answer. And I'm curious, did you know Little Nero's if you had gotten that?
No, I did not know Little Nero's. No. So I wouldn't have gotten that, actually.
That's Frank's favorite place in Chicago.
Right.
Really?
Actually, when the anniversary came around, I forget what piece of place was doing it, but they were actually Little Nero's on the anniversary date of the movie, which was kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
Well, heading to sudden death, I love this format still, just because it works like tennis, where it's a deuce advantage type format. And Knost hit it right out of the gate right away with the Cinderella Man movie tagline. And then he got the final question right away. Frank Sinatra played the George Clooney role in the original Ocean's 11. So RB3, is it frustrating to lose like this when you really did not get a chance to kind of dish it back? You didn't really get a chance like in football where you get your own chance to score. Do you like this format? Tell me about your thoughts on sudden death.
It's frustrating, man, because I knew both of those answers, but I didn't hit the button correctly and fast enough. I know we had done a test round of the buttons beforehand, and one of the things that happened was I did hit the button in the test round. I hit the button first, but I didn't hit it hard enough. So if you watch the tape of the match that premiered yesterday, I had lifted my hand and hit it down harder so I can make sure I hit it hard enough. But unfortunately, that wasn't fast. That action wasn't fast enough, whereas Matt Knost just kind of tapped it and hit it first. But, that's just me. I wasn't used to the buzzers yet. I'll be ready for next time.
Yeah, sudden death. I like you, Brian. I like this format very much like tennis, and props to Knost for answering the questions. I thought the Ocean's 11 question was a pretty easy one for a sudden death question. I'm not sure how tough we're supposed to make those or not make those, but nonetheless, I thought it was a pretty simple question and an easy answer. And I gotta sympathize with RB3 here, because it's got to be kind of painful to lose in that fashion, but at the same time, battle through that second round. You scrape through the third round to tie it up, and then to be so close. I got to feel for you, RB3. That's super unfortunate. And I mean, just compare Knost's 5-point question to the 5-point question you got. I mean, there's literally like 50-year difference between those movies. So an unfortunate loss. But here's the thing: I think a lot of people, and I'm one of them, questioned whether or not you could have the knowledge needed for this with you being so young. I thought that was kind of the case in the first round with the Wayne's World question and the Fugitive question. Do you think that is partially a reason why you missed those?
I think it's a factor, definitely. But I think even through that, I could still play a pretty tremendous game. I mean, some people could look at the final score and say it wasn't the highest scoring match. Well, that's because neither of us hit our 5-pointers. But when you look at the amount of points of the amount of questions I got right, I was 9 for 15. That's 60%. That's higher than a lot of the competitors in the league thus far. And I think I'm trying to build the 80s and 90s knowledge up a little bit more because at the end of the day, that's what a lot of this competition is based around, given the generation of a lot of the competitors. But you know, in terms of classic films, in terms of 70s movies, I could do pretty well in 2000s, 2010s, and, you know, recent films I could do pretty well in, movie release dates, comic book movies, you know. But if it comes to some of the nerdier categories, I'm not going to be great in them. If it comes to some of the 80s movies, I'm not going to be great in them either. But that being said, I'm still ready to play. I'm trying to focus up on those on those areas. I've been trying to watch as many 80s movies as possible and whatnot. So with all that being said, I still think there's a very bright future for me in the league. And I think, you know, this may sound conceited, but I think I had a very great debut coming out the gates in the single. So,
oh, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. I think you showed the base of your foundation of knowledge, and over the next several months or even years, maybe, your knowledge is going to grow on top of that base you've laid out. And I absolutely think you're going to get a lot better over time, especially if you hone in on the 80s, because that is a huge thing that a lot of these competitors are good in, is the 80s. A lot of them are in that, I guess, age range where 80s was a big part of their movie going experience. So, and I think once you catch up to that part, you're going to be, I think, one of the top players in the league, because, I mean, you got this classic knowledge building. You have the new stuff already in your pocket. Once you get that middle ground covered, I think you're going to be a hard match for anybody in this league. Brian?
Yeah, there are certain losses that are impressive, and this was an impressive loss. Yeah, you wish you'd won, but you had the tougher draw. That is a fact, and I can't believe Knost won this match when you consider the fact that he did not call multiple choice for his first question in round 2. Typically, mistakes like those come back to haunt most players, but because Knost got a little bit lucky in terms of getting favorable categories the rest of the match, he was able to offset that mistake. So most matches you would have won if you were to replay this match over and over again, but the luck just did not go your way. But you've got a bright future ahead of you, and every day you attend USC, it's like a Schmoedown training, because you're learning so much as it is. So I would not hang your head whatsoever.
Well, that's the thing, man. I want to become the competitor that competes in the most Schmoedown matches in history. Okay, I want to beat Josh McCouga's record in competition here. I want to, even if I'm, you know, 2-14 or whatever, I still want to get in that ring, because it's fun, man, and it's addictive. And I really do believe I have something to prove here, because even though, you know, I know I'm young, I'm only 19, age and whatnot, but I know my stuff, man. And building up to that championship, which I am going for, you know, obviously I need a little more seasoning before I can compete with guys like Roca or Bibiani or McWeeny. But, you know, those guys have been watching films for years. But I'm ready to get to that next level. And I think as soon as I could get notification for another matchup, as soon as somebody else challenges me, I'm ready to get back in the ring and face them. So
keep in mind, those guys will be retired when you're their age, and you'll be the champion because they'll be retired. So, you know, 15 years from now, you may be the belt holder for several years consecutively. You never know. But yeah, the future is certainly bright. But post interviews, Knost continue to, I don't know, he keeps knocking Christian. He knocks his clothing. He's acting like he's being disrespected, which, you know, whatever. I don't know what that's about. But Robert, you said some interesting things about challenging Greg from your own faction. Now, why would you betray your own stable, Robert? Are the Young Bucks on the rocks already? What's going on?
I had legitimately forgot he was part of our faction.
Is that worse?
Not like that, but I was so frustrated from losing that I was just like, man, you know, I need to challenge somebody.
Just give me anybody.
So I was thinking, who's the last person that beat me before Knost? And I was thinking, oh, well, Greg. And then I was like, oh yeah, let me challenge him. And then Copster quickly corrected me and reminded me that he was part of our faction. So that's what happened. And I don't mean any harm towards Greg. He's a great guy, and especially the Real Rejects, because unfortunately, I'll just say this now. I guess as announcing now, I unfortunately won't be part of the free for all. I have a conflicting thing that day, so graciously, John from the Real Rejects was able to step in for me and compete. I don't know if that was supposed to be announced here or not, but sorry, Christian, I'll probably get a phone call later about that. But anyhow, yeah. So that was that was that. But I was a little. I'm not gonna lie. The it happened one night thing was flustering me a little bit, and but but at the end of the day, it's still competition. I remember after the match when me and No shook hands, we kind of looked at each other. It's like, man, we kind of played this thing like assholes, man, and then so, but I mean, that's how it is. It's is as Knost will say, it's a man's game, and I didn't put up those numbers yet, but here we are today. So,
well, Robert challenged Brienne, Miss Movies, 6 Degrees fame. 6 Degrees and Miss Movies continue to be the most challenged players by far. They don't have the matches to correspond with that, though. So I know Miss Movies is playing Perry coming up. So I hope that they get out there more, because people seem to like playing them.
Yeah, I definitely like to see more of Team 6 Degrees, whether it's just Brienne or even just Stacy. I would love to see them compete in the singles. I know, obviously, Brienne is very willing to be in the singles. I hope we get to see Stacey Howard, because in her last match, good in that match, and kind of carried her team through that match. So if RB3 ends up playing Brienne or even Stacey Howard, I think it'll be a great match, because like RB3 studying up on film, we've seen evidence of Brienne doing the same thing. She has a list of movies she's trying to go through. She's reading books. So I think it could be a really cool match to see these two studying players finally duke it out and see who's learned the most over this amount of time.
Yeah, and like we said, RB3 proved that he belongs in singles. And as I predicted, though, last week, Matt Knost was going to ride the momentum and the renewed confidence that his recent team match against the Schmoes brought him. Of course, it just so happened to be recorded on the same day as the singles match. And while Knost is not a dominant player, he's just good enough to win here and there. And I think we'll see Knost play the role of spoiler as far as his singles career is concerned. In other words, I don't think he'll ever come close to winning a belt, but I think he'll upset players in singles who are on the title path, since he'll often be overlooked and viewed as an underdog. Of course, he'll always be in the team title mix as long as he's Roka's Charlie Prince.
All right, let's get into the Week 12 preview. Starting on Tuesday, the 4th of April, we have Christian Harloff continuing his revenge tour against Andy Signor. He last played Andy Signor way back in June 10th, 2016. He lost by a score of 16-11. It was a tight match going into that third round. They were all tied up at 10. But unfortunately for Harloff, he did not answer his 3- and 5-point question, which eventually did him in for the loss. These two getting back together. Brian, what do we think we're going to see when these two finally have that rematch?
Well, Signor Harloff 1 really came down to the last question, despite Christian playing terribly, to be honest. And he had some awful category draws too, especially in round 3. But his individual luck has turned of late, so I think he'll avenge his previous loss against Andy, and I think he's going to win quite comfortably.
RB3, how do you see this match going, if you can tell us?
Listen, I think Christian is hungry. He's ready to get back in the ring, and I think he's been on his revenge tour. He wiped out some of his fellow competitors already on his revenge tour, so I think Andy Signor's the next step, and I don't think there's any stopping him this time. Obviously, there's going to be some trepidation going up, challenging Andy after the match that was played last time that wasn't so successful. But I'm definitely rooting for Christian. I think he definitely got it this time, and he's the commissioner, man. So he's got to win that his own game, right?
Actually, he's the chairman.
Oh, chairman. I'm sorry.
For this rematch, I think it's going to come down to the wire, to tell you the truth. I really think so. And I do think Harloff will pull off the win. These guys, from what we've seen just in their past match, Andy was on top of his game. He was 11 of 13. So he knows his stuff. Harloff was 9 of 13. So there's not a lot of separation between these two. And I think, like you said, Brian, his luck has turned as of late, his personal luck. Yep. So I really think the revenge tour is not going to end here. It's going to keep on going. Eventually, hopefully, maybe one day, he gets his revenge on Roca. That would be an amazing rematch. But looking forward to the Friday match, because this singles match that we're talking about, Harloff and Signor, is on a Tuesday. Normally, we have a team match. Mm-hmm. This week is switched up, and I reached out to Harloff to ask about what's going on for Friday because it was TBD. And I asked him about it, and he said there will be a match on Friday, and it's TBD, to be determined. He's not telling me. I don't know what stuff the commissioner has up his sleeve. So get excited for that, because I think hopefully, it's going to be something exciting. I don't know what's going to be thrown in that slot. If we're going to find out later in the week, who knows?
It's to be determined by RB3 right now. That's what it means.
If I had an answer, I would love to tell you guys, but I honestly don't know either. So
you're winking at the camera. I can see it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here on the Schmoedown Rundown. It was great having you, RB3. Thanks for joining us. Where can the good people find you at?
Thanks for having me, Frank and Brian. It's been a real pleasure. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram at RB3 Schmoes, Facebook, Robert Butler III. My YouTube channel, I'm always digging in the comments somewhere. So you can find me there. And it's also my name, Robert Butler III. That's where I put my original short films and whatnot. And yeah, you could find me on yesterday's Schmoedown match. It was a lot of fun. Played Matt Knost. We got to talk about it here. So go ahead and watch it again, because, if you're watching this show, I'm sure you've watched the match already, but check it again, hit the like button. And so thanks again for having me.
And Brian, where can we find you on the internets?
Robert, thanks again for joining us and coming in the clutch with our host on assignment this week. You guys can follow me, Brian Davids, on Twitter at BDF331. Check out my TV film podcast at filmschlubspodcast.com. And special thanks to Shane Bowman at HeisenbergChronicles.com and Clint Lajeunesse at Floyd Pinkster for their artwork contributions this week to the show.
And as for me, you can catch me on Twitter at FrankieJ29. Check out the weekly recap article on the Schmoedown every Monday on the schmoesknow.com website. Also, I'm also in the Facebook Movie Trivia Schmoedown page. Send me a question, or don't. Who cares? Anyways, that's going to do it for us here. Until next time, we'll see you later.